What is up? This is John Nelson, and you are listening to the Starting Block Podcast. This is the podcast for complete athletic development. So if you are looking for a raw, uncut look into the trenches of how to develop athletes and how to have optimal performance, then we are the show for you. If you're new, I want to welcome you to the show. Give you a quick breakdown of how our show works. We usually have 4 different types of episodes that we'll get into. The first type of episode is going to be the soup of the day, or the soup du jour. It's a Dumb and Dumber reference there for you guys. This is going to be the most common type of show where we'll just, Chris and I, my co-host, will take a topic and we'll break it down, give you guys some information on that. The second type of show is going to be more of a Q&A. So these are going to be questions that you guys have submitted directly to us, clients or athletes, and we will answer those questions and give you guys the tools that you need to win. The third type of episode is going to be a guest interview. This is where we will bring on colleagues from across the world, and they will share their stories of success and how they win and help give you guys the tools for that as well. And then the fourth episode is going to be John ranting. So this is just where, if you guys know me, you know sometimes that I like to go down some rabbit holes, and I'm very passionate about what we do, and sometimes I just need to brain dump and get it out there. And those are usually about 8 to 15-minute shows. So today's episode is going to be an interview. And before we move any further, and before I get Chris on and our guest, I just want to say that this is a very humbling opportunity for myself. This particular individual has really shaped and molded my career, and he honestly didn't even know it. This is somebody who inspired me to get involved into this world, and it really means a lot to have him with us today. And so with that, I'm going to actually bring our co-host, Chris Scarborough, on now, and Chris is going to introduce our guest.
Absolutely, yes. I certainly consider him a mentor since 2005. Probably learned a lot of what I was doing wrong prior, as well as kind of a whole different way of approaching athletic development in my particular case, but also had an impact on how I work with everyone from athletes to elderly. So first of all, Jay, thank you again. I'm going to just duplicate what John said on having you here. We appreciate it. But secondly, a lot of people actually think you're a myth, that you aren't even a real person. And we're here to, first of all, say that, yes, he is a real person. He's here with us today. And yes, secondly,
ladies and gentlemen, Jay Schroeder, the myth, is here, live in person.
He is here.
People wish I wasn't a real person.
But anyhow, yes, there's, and secondly, he's referenced. Jay is referenced probably more than anybody I have ever seen in the strength and conditioning industry. I think, and oftentimes, it's coming from someone else. It's not coming from Jay himself. So rather than bringing on someone who thinks they know what Jay was saying, we decided, hey, let's ask Jay himself to come speak for himself, and he agreed to be with us. And thank you again, Jay. We appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice meeting you, John. And just so you know, my one of my best friends, he died about 20 years ago, but one of my best friends was named John Nelson. He,
wow.
He played for the Dallas Cowboys.
I don't believe that was a reference or a family tie-in right there. And I'm actually a Giants fan too. So.
Yeah, I grew up a Giants fan. My dad played for them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he broke his nose 8 times in 1 year.
Oof.
Oh, wow.
Said,
yeah.
I think he was making like 50 cents a game, and he said, I don't think there's any future in this.
Yeah.
I still have his helmet. It's unbelievable that those guys played the way they did.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Man. Yeah. Well, Jay, one thing we definitely want you to tell us, and that is, how did Evo, whether it be the Evo Code, Evo UltraFit, your systems, how did they come about? I mean, give us the origin, because they didn't just, come around for no reason. There was a reason. There was an origin story for these.
Yeah, the impetus, the genesis for doing what I'm doing now and what I have been doing, just so you guys know, it has never changed in 45 years. it does not change. It's far ahead of its time, and it's still far ahead of anything that anyone's doing. But anyhow, it came about because it was necessary for me. I was in an accident, Reader's Digest version, head injuries, broke my back in 6 places, neck in 4 places, yada yada, all these things. I don't remember most of it. Most of what I do know is from what I was told. And over the years, I found out that it's really been brain trauma. And, today I still have some problems. The older I got, I'm 67 now. When this accident was when I was 20. So it was quite a long time ago. But I needed something because I was afraid to be paralyzed. I was afraid to be in bed the rest of my life and not be able to do anything on my own, because I had always done everything on my own. And it was really scary, to be honest. And had an osteopathic physician, and he didn't know what to do. They put me in traction at home because there was nothing in the hospital they can do. There was no sense of my parents having to spend money that they didn't have. And because the guy that hit me was not insured, so it was all on my own. But he gave me some Soviet training drills. Obviously, they were translated because I don't read or speak Russian. I speak enough Russian to get in trouble. And I started reading those because that's all I could do. My father set up a little platform over my head, and I had, you remember the old pointers, Chris, in school? The teacher, John, I don't think you're old enough. He would point to the board, I had one of those, and I could flip the pages. Well, I ended up reading those, 30, 40, 50 more times. And I never really grasped anything. I wondered why he gave them to me, because they were simply about training and nothing to do with what I thought I was experiencing at the time. And then all of a sudden, one day, it clicked, and I started reading everything all over again and went, wow, this is my solution. And I had trouble feeling. Sometimes I was numb from nipples down. Sometimes I was numb just on the right side, left side, legs, upper, hands, feet. It was very random and sporadic, but enough to keep me in bed for close to a year and a half without really doing anything. So I started to do everything in my head, and I figured that if I could create pain somewhere, anywhere, that I could get feeling back again. Well, I was extremely successful in being able to do that, and I could replicate that pain, and then pretty soon that pain became control of muscles, and hence where I'm at today. Nobody would ever know. If you were my wife or you've known me for 30, 40 years, then there would be some things you would see, but otherwise, out in the real world, nobody truly knows. And I thought, son of a bitch, if this works for me in this situation, what would it do for somebody that wants to play sport, or just somebody who wants to live a better life? And that's how I started to develop the system. I did a lot of reading, as you can imagine. That's all I truly could do. And I read everything and anything. I studied every supposed training system that had been or was in existence. And I didn't study them for their successes. I studied to see what the failures were. Because if you can look at a system or anything in reality and see that all of the failures are exactly the same, then you know there truly is a system. If the failures are random, then there is no system. They've just taken a bunch of information from all of us, throw it against the wall. If something's stuck, that's what they do. And I said I want something that will allow the human to actually be able to display the miracle that we all are by birth. And every human deserves to have the opportunity to do whatever it is and apply it however they want to. To me, I believe that if everyone was happy with themselves and was successful, whatever it was that they chose to do, writing poetry, climbing mountains, being a poor gym owner, and anything in between, then you're less likely to covet what someone else has. You're less likely to want to take something that someone has, and because you like yourself, you love yourself, you'll do that with your fellow men. So there's a real selfish background in Evo. I have a strong belief in God. That's the only reason I came back, I believe, from, I was trying to play football, and I think one day God said, Jay, you are not good enough. And I said, no, I'm going to make it. And he said, no, I'm going to make sure you don't, because we need to use you somewhere else. And that's how it came to be. Didn't understand that in the beginning, like everyone else. Why the hell did this happen to me? What did I do wrong? What's going on? Anyhow, through all these readings and studies, I created a system. Believe it or not, I wrote it down in about 12 hours. My mentor, Robert Plenty, who's also not with us anymore, he was a gung-ho American. He was Special Forces, and I was reading all this Soviet stuff, and he didn't really care for that. But we were best of friends, and he let it go. Always told me I need to get on the right side, rather than reading Soviet stuff. But then when he saw what I was doing with it and what he had been doing, he was one of the first people, just so you know, to squat 1,000 pounds legitimately. And he would do it every 30 minutes at his work. His business was selling exercise equipment and then setting up training for the Yuma prisoners. So I went with him everywhere and did everything, and he had his health problems. He was in the hospital, and he called me and said, hey, if you want to see me alive one more time, come on over, because I'm going to die. And, I can answer any questions you may have. And I didn't have anything, but I didn't want to lose him as a friend. I went over there and was having conversation. He said, look, I'm going to go home to die tonight. And, I gave you first opportunity to speak to me. And if you don't have any other questions or anything, then I'd like to tell you, I totally disagree with the source of all your information. But I've seen its value. And I want you to pursue it for the rest of your life and to your dying day. And I said, okay. And he says, because you are the best strength coach in the world. Not because you know more than anyone. Not because you've studied harder than anyone. But because you've implemented every single thing. You know every variable, how they work together, the good and the bad. Nothing is all good and nothing is all bad. So you have to understand there's a trade-off. And if there's 7 negatives and only 2 positives, well, those 2 positives outweigh those negatives. If they will, then continue what you're doing. If not, then you need to, find and affect a variable that will change that to the way you want it. And from that point on, that's when I started taking it seriously. I started experimenting on my family. And some really cool results, and then I just moved forward from there. But the basis has never, ever changed. All humans are miracles. Every human is fast, powerful, explosive, fit, possesses endurance. We have everything inside us. We are lacking for nothing. The problem is that we don't know the command or don't have the key to unlock the door to allow it to be displayed. So EVO, which is actually evolutionary training, but I think people had trouble with multiple syllables, so it became EVO. Some people even called it EVO. Literally, sometimes we would be on a bench press for 8 or 10 hours because we measured everything, and if anything was flawed, we began over at the start. So you were prepared when you came in to have to spend the whole day. If not, then don't come to Evo. Originally, it was called UltraFit. Okay, and what's happened since then is UltraFit is the knowledge, and Evo is the dissemination of the knowledge. You know, business stuff. You guys each own your own businesses. You understand all that,
Right.
and I had to separate it for legal reasons. Anyhow, because if somebody, you know, they could take everything if they wanted. So I have two different companies, but we all know it is Evo UltraFit. Okay, but UltraFit was really the training system itself. And we also believe that movement is the key to life. Velocity is the key to movement, and position is the key to velocity. Those there are the basic tenets of how everything came to be. You know, now we explain it as absorb force, create force quickly many times. And if you don't master A, you never get to see what B is. And that pisses a lot of people off. And a lot of people who play games, you know, and even play games for a living and make money and a lot of good money at it, think that they're beyond that. But in reality, they're not. And then I further subdivided that into breathe, sit, stand, and walk, because those form the basis of every single thing we're going to do in the rest of our lives. Whether it's us speaking to each other here, asking and answering questions, whatever it is we're doing. Okay? Our nervous systems are responsible for every single aspect of every single thing we do. So unless you have a healthy, plastic, virile, dynamic nervous system, how can you go into a gym? You can't. How can you play sport? Well, you can. But as we're seeing, and I think, John, I heard a few comments, and I'm going to paraphrase you because I don't remember it exactly. I'm old and have long-term, short-term memory loss. And you said something about kids today have devolved. They're not very prepared for anything, and it's our fault, and it's their fault, and it's their parents' fault, you know. And because of this, not everybody can get back to the miracle that we were born to be. You've lost that opportunity, typically by the age of 3 or 4 years old, depending on how early you mature. Now, that doesn't mean you can't improve where you are. But if somebody says, well, I want to run a 9.3 100 meters, when we evaluate, there's certain things we look at, and there's no hope of that. But it doesn't mean you can't be quick, because quickness is reactive ability, starting strength. You know, when you get to acceleration, that takes something very special. And I like to think of it as, we all know what feed forward is, right? Feedback. We all know what feedback is. And you put your hand on the stove and you pull away. Feed forward is what we truly need to live as this miracle. Again, to utilize everything that's inside us. It's all there. We're missing nothing. God gave us free will. And sometimes we don't take advantage of that. We rationalize why we don't have to do certain things, or why we like certain things, or whatever it may be. And that's the problem with kids today, as I see it, and elite athletes also. And if you look at the elite athletes, and we'll just for now define them as people who get paid to play sport or display a skill. They come to me and stay with me. They all have one thing in common. They understand that they are a miracle, and they aren't even close to living their life as a miracle. They may not see until after they retire what they're truly capable of. I work with people who write poetry, music, interpret writings and books and things. We train the same way as if, I don't know, John, if you train for anything specific, but we train exactly the same way. There is no difference because everything, the base of everything is exactly the same. Without a healthy plastic aerodynamic nervous system, we go nowhere. And then I further subdivided that into what I call pipes, because everybody likes acronyms: physiology, intellect, psychology, emotion, and spirit. Each one of those has subheadings of different physiological traits, which then have subheadings dealing with the energy systems. And all of those things come into play at some point. But the beginning is always breathe, sit, stand, and walk. So, Chris, you're doing EVO Code, and originally I think we were on here to discuss what EVO Code truly is. And EVO Code is a subset of EVO UltraFit evolutionary training, formed by myself, my wife, and a baseball player that I worked with for many years, had tremendous success, and his partner. And they wanted to help give back to kids. And that's how EVO Code came to be. And EVO Code is entry level. It's all the things that I've just been mentioning. It's within the EVO family of system. We don't try to get strong. We don't try to get fast. We don't try to get explosive. We don't try to possess endurance. We prepare to recover from when those displays take place, because we want to be able to replicate them over and over and over. Now, you guys, I know you've trained a lot of people in your careers, and Chris more because you and I are older than John, but we've probably all seen exactly the same thing. We see somebody who comes in and they bench, squat, deadlift. I think deadlift is your favorite exercise, John? Is that right?
If I had to pick an exercise for, I guess, a strength component, yeah, I guess I would say deadlift.
I had heard that through the rumor mill, but it's also my favorite, and then bench. But it really doesn't matter. If all we did was bench press, we could get everything we needed. We could be faster, we could jump higher, we could display tremendous force with our legs if all we did was bench press. Because you see, you can't separate your upper body from your lower body. Everything communicates to each other. And then we all know about cross-crawling when you walk and you run, right arm, left leg, left arm, right leg, and those things. And not everybody's capable of doing that, especially when you apply high force and extreme velocity. And then throw something where the skill is even more complicated than what they think they're going to have to do. EVO prepares you to do all those things and to recover from those. Within the system that you're in, Chris, to me, it was probably paragraph 1 of what I wrote originally within the system.
I'm in paragraph 1 after all these years.
Yeah, you're kindergarten.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you don't move forward and you don't get faster and you don't, all the things you want to display. It doesn't mean those don't improve. But it means you need to prepare yourself to come for what's coming next. I like to say mastery. It's a real word I like. I think it's an old word, but I'm old, so it's okay. And, I had many chances to visit with Dr. Yesis. His wife and my wife and I used to meet in Sedona and have many discussions, and, Mel Siff, Verko Shansky. I'm old, so I got to talk to all these guys. And then when I was in Russia, I got to meet a lot of people, and it was interesting because Yuri would say, I use this, but I was told you don't use it this way. And I said, no, because it doesn't work. How you know it doesn't work? Who will you do this with? I said, I do it on old people, young people, whoever I have. Is bullshit. Cannot work with old people. I said, sure it does, but it works this way. And if you're prepared to this level, now you can accept this and these bits of information. It's like, people are always saying, we need to eat natural. All the beef has to be raised in a certain way, the cattle this and all that. Well, we all know that it's all well and good up until the last 30 to 45 days before they slaughter it, because then anything goes. they can inject it with whatever they want, however they want, when they want. So, it's kind of hokey, but they charge us a lot of money for it, and some people pay for it. But it's like that. Let's say it was natural. And how old are you, John? Are you 30-something or?
35.
35, okay. So for 35 years, you've been eating and living however you've been eating and living. So if you introduce, say, some natural product, it's not going to do anything for us. Your body, your brain has no idea what to do with it. So it breaks it down, it gets rid of it in your waste because it has no clue what to do. And what if, and maybe in the real world today, people are talking about, making us eat bugs and things because we don't deserve food, because we're not the same class as someone else or whatever. But if you're prepared, you can get anything that you need from anything you take in. Because that's why we're the miracle. That's what makes us a miracle. I've had people, and Chris, you know this because we've talked about it, who did nothing but eat ice cream 3 times a day. They could eat as much as they want. And we all know that people get tired of eating ice cream eventually. It sounds like, yeah, that's what I want to do. But they were able to replicate the same results as somebody that was eating the, quote, most healthy diet eating plan that you could have. We did nothing but drink milk, whole milk, skim milk, all day long, because you have to spread things out like that, and produce the exact same results. So it just goes to support everything that I thought from the beginning. Every human is a miracle. We may not see ourselves as that because we see that we have extreme weaknesses, and we all do, but it doesn't mean we're not a miracle. It just means we need to work and learn and grow to be able to live like that. I can tell you this, that if it wasn't for Evo, I would be bedridden. I would not be able to do the things I do. What it takes to accelerate a motorcycle from 0 to 209 miles an hour in 13 seconds. I'm also slowing down to 0 in that time, by the way. The fine motor skills are freaking unbelievable. Because if you squeeze the brake just a little too much, you flip over the front. If you use the rear brake, it's a little too much, the back end washes out and you're out in the desert, or, and most people aren't going to survive anything that's 200 plus miles an hour. It applies to every single thing. I met my wife, this is my second marriage, and after I was divorced, I met Cindy, and I knew I had to marry her. She was a client to begin with, and she set up the deaf education program in the Mesa school system. She set up programs at Gallaudet University, the deaf university, many books. When dignitaries, president, or whatever dignitary came to the valley here, she was the one who interpreted and everything. And when I watched her and listened to her, because I would go to her classroom so that I could learn something that I may need someday. And I just said to myself, I've got to marry this woman. And she did not like me. We were not friends. She did not like the way I trained her and anything like that. So that's Evo. Evo is never about lifting weights. Evo is never about jumping high. In fact, in my weight room, eventually, people won't accept it at this point. I don't want any weights. I don't need them. What I need is what you have here, what you have here. That's all we truly need. Pipes, physiology, intellect, psychology, emotion, and spirit. It's a cruel joke that God played on us. He gave us those things, or the ability to demonstrate them, utilize them. But the joke part of it is that if one of the 5 are at 98% and the others are 100, you render everything useless. Because they're only available to us if they're all at 100%. That's how I started to create my training protocols. And everybody thinks ISO extreme was first, and it wasn't. Altitude drop was first. But I didn't know the vastness of how inefficient people were. I didn't really have an understanding of how inefficient and or how unwilling they were to sacrifice something. We're not talking about money. I mean, John, when I started, I charged $40 a month. What could you do with $40 a month per client? Not a whole lot.
Not much today. But, yeah.
And if you were a client when I started...
You could buy that new pack of bugs, maybe.
Well, not the high-class bugs. Maybe caterpillars, not roaches. But if you were a client of mine when you started, and you were still here today, I never raised your rate. I never asked for more. That's what we agreed to. That's Evo. We make an agreement. We make an agreement with ourselves. People come in, and I'm sure you guys get this a lot. Jay, I read about you. I heard about you. I talked to this person. You can produce results. I don't produce results. The individual produces the results. A coach doesn't tell you what to do. A coach guides you, gives you the opportunity to learn what you need to learn in order to be able to help yourself display what you want to display. That's why people get so upset with me, and I'm an asshole, and I'm a jerk, and I'm this, and I'm that. Me, I ultimately don't really care, because if I can look at myself in the mirror, then I'm okay. Because I don't tell them everything. If I tell you something, did you learn anything? No. Do you know all the ins and outs? Will you have mastery and command over that? No. So my goal has always been to put people in a position where they have to learn or fail, and then they give up. 95% of the people I've ever met, that's where it's been. They give up. They fail. Because Jay won't tell them this, Jay won't tell them that. And again, I'm the jerk. Yet, nobody loves people more than I do. And I'm not telling you I love everybody individually, because there are people that I don't like, as well as there's people who don't like me, which is fine. That's the way it is. We all wouldn't go to dinner with everybody in this world and have a fun conversation. Okay? But I love human beings. I love people. I love animals. Because they're God's creation. And every single one deserves the opportunity to live as the miracle they were born to be. Not be put down because they may have a flaw. Because they're deaf. Or they're blind. Or something. It doesn't really matter. We all have our flaws. But we all can overcome every single one. Without drugs, without medication, without special foods. I listened to a podcast because I wanted to learn more about you, John, before I did this, because the eye and pipes part of me, right? So I could participate intellectually.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to understand. I heard you say, and because I'm going to be critical here doesn't mean anything, because we're all here to learn, right?
Yeah, be critical, please.
And I heard you say, in the ISO extreme, it doesn't matter where you go as long as it's where you can go. And that's absolutely wrong. Because if you can bring your knee to your chest, you can do an ISO extreme squat. If you can bring your arm, let me get in the camera here, behind you, you can do an ISO extreme push-up. You just may not have the commands to make that happen or want to make that happen because it's too uncomfortable. You're not willing to endure the cost of that. And again, it's not monetary cost. It's intellectual, it's emotional, it's psychological. Those are the costs that we have to be able or willing to endure. Hence pipes, physiology, intellect, psychology, emotion, and spirit. Okay? So if I had someone, which you can ask my current wife or my previous wife, and they don't want to do it, bye-bye. I've had athletes that make, and this is years ago, $6-8 million a year, that I said, bye-bye. Because they didn't want to follow the system the way the system is designed. You come into my facility, or I come to you, whatever it may be, it's the system or the highway. There is no in between. Because to me, this is a system that prepares you the way God intended. Okay? Again, I believe in God, strong belief, but you may not, but somehow we got here. And to be loyal to that is how we get to live as this miracle. Because we've all seen things where we've had clients or ourselves, we've done this wonderful performance. Our coach, our spouse, our team, our friends. John, how the hell did you do that? Chris, how did you do that? And I almost know word for word what you said. I don't know. It just happened. Right? Were you thinking about the greatest achievement, performance of your life when it happened? No. So why the hell would you want to think about benching while you're benching? See, there's a real important thing, and if you haven't gathered by now, pipes is really important, because we're now talking about the psychological portion. Okay? You need to understand what the end is. And the end isn't scoring a touchdown. The end isn't running fast. The end isn't displaying a bench press. The end is something far greater. What is the end of our life? What does it feel like? Now, I'll give you mine, and I've cussed a couple times, and I hope that's not a problem, John, Chris.
Yeah, you're all good on this show.
But I'm going to give you what my end picture is, and in reality, it's the feeling of the end. It's not the end itself, to see it, but it's to feel it. Because if you can't feel it, you'll never be able to achieve it. Okay? And Bruce Lee, he said a lot of things that were on that order. Okay? And look how freaking awesome he was, and the things he could do. Yet he still had his limitations. But anyhow, my end, feeling of the end, is a sexual release, an orgasm. It's the most powerful thing we do as humans. It brings together all of pipes into one action, the same as it should be. John, when you go to bench press, squat, curl, deadlift, jump, whatever it is you do. Chris, for you, it's in doing that Russian lunge, just getting into an iso extreme lunge. Okay? It should be there every single thing we do. When we're on this podcast, again, John, the reason I watched things was because I not only wanted to participate intellectually, but I wanted to understand a little bit about you. Because I knew nothing. I already know enough about Chris, way too much. But because it's important. If you don't understand that, you'll never be able to feel what that person is trying to express in their words. Because we don't communicate in words. We say words. But what happens inside our mind is they're converted to pictures. And we then have to feel what that picture represents. That's how we communicate. And if you don't, well, you're never going to be the best at anything. You're going to, no doubt, you can reach some level of success. And a lot of people are, as we've all seen, are satisfied with this, even though this is where they could be. But they're satisfied with this. You know, I had a client, and I used to have this whiteboard, and everybody would take a turn writing their thought for the day. And it stayed for a week, but it was called the thought of the day. And this one woman wrote, set your standard low, and you don't have to work as hard, and you'll never be disappointed. Pretty cool, huh? Whew. Anyhow, she was a nice old lady. She was 52 or 53 when she started with me. But anyhow, I'm sure that stimulated a lot of questions. There's a couple more things I want to say about what contributed to Evo and to my experiences and then maybe you can more understand why Jay is the way he is. When I worked for Lutheran Healthcare Network, I technically was in the wellness program, but I was on loan to everybody else in the hospital, and I saw psych patients, teenagers that I was in a padded room with a window about this big, that wanted to kill me because I was something that they thought they could never be or never attain. Time in the diabetes center, we'll just say physical therapy, cardiac rehab. I set up programs for patients that were long-term, 6, 8, 10 months in the hospital and they weren't out yet. I met the medical director of my program in this manner. He had a young high school girl who was in the back of a pickup truck. They went to lunch and they had to stop quickly and she was thrown out of the truck. Insurance was running out and she wasn't anywhere near where he felt comfortable releasing her, but they had no more, family had no money. And he heard that there was this strange and interesting guy working in the wellness department. The gym I was in was 300 square feet. We had the old universal machine. Chris?
Oh, yeah. Familiar, yes.
Really, now we're powder to blow it to heck, right?
Yep.
But that's all I had. And my 300 and some square feet included a shower. Okay. So there really wasn't a lot of room. But he brought her in. He brought in a stack of papers this thick telling me about her history. He said, I'd like to bring her by tomorrow because we have 14 days. And I'd like to feel comfortable releasing her. So he said, do you think you could devise a program for me over the next few days? And I said, of course. So I read all the information. The next morning, you know, in the hospital, what do you call that mail where it goes through the air tube and it sucks it through? What do you call that?
Pneumatic guide, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. And he had it in his office the next morning. He called me and said, did you read everything? I said, oh, yeah. So we're having this. You did this. This worked, and then it didn't work after a certain amount of time. And I said, I have it figured out. I know what to do. He said, how do you know? I said, because I'm feeling everything she goes through. And that's how I create programs. So if you wanted a program, individual program, I would gather my data, and then I would feel everything you're going through when trying to perform what it is that you're training for. And that's how I then create the programs. When I feel those things, I can solve it in 20 seconds. It may take me hours to write the program, but the absolute solution I already understand. So it's about a feeling. Everything is about a feeling. And here's the secret to training. One thing I have never heard anyone, no one has ever said, at least that I've heard, who says that I've helped them or done this or that and provided information and impetus for them to move forward, is that when you're training, if you feel anything, it's wrong. The only place you should feel is in your heart. If you feel your hamstring, if you feel your quad, if you feel your biceps, if you feel medial deltoid, it's wrong. Because remember what we just talked about. John, you've had a great performance in your life, I'm assuming, athletically. Something you never thought you could do. Have you? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so, yeah.
Okay. Or setting up your business. People may have said, nah, John, maybe I don't think you'll be successful doing this. And you were able to do it. But when they asked you again, what were you thinking about? I have no idea. It just happened. And that's the preparation we're talking about. Why we don't train for performance. People train to get strong. Well, shit, anybody can get strong. You can do everything wrong and get strong. All you have to do is add body fat and you get strong because you create, pressure inside where things push off each other and, it's, so you can do literally anything.
End.
Pardon me?
The end is not as the end vision is not as much a vision as it is a feeling.
It's a feeling.
Is that
and it
correct?
has to be a feeling, John, of whatever your life is going to end up being. What are they going to write on your gravestone if you have a gravestone? I don't know what it'll be when we all die. May change by then. But it's whatever you want it to feel in your life as a human on this earth. That's the end. And that everything you do will improve you towards that end. And if you want to play football along the way, or you want to be a power lifter along the way, or you want to be a dancer, or you want to be write poetry, or you want to be a teacher, or you want to be whatever, everything will work towards that end. Everything will make sense. There won't be, oh man, I've got to do that ISO extreme for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. John, Chris, you guys are freaking joking. That's ridiculous. Well, you see, there won't be that anymore if you truly understand the feeling of the end. And I don't know any other way to describe it other than the end, okay? Because to me, that's kind of terminal. Okay? And whatever that feeling is, and you really have to get inside yourself. You can't just say, like, I'll give you an example, a hockey player. Well, I want to score the winning goal. I want to feel scoring the goal in the Stanley Cup, 7th game, tie game, and I win the game. Okay. Well, that's so shallow. That's not your life. Your life is more than that. But if you work towards whatever the feeling of this end in, and again, it has to be your own. It can't be what Jay or John or Chris thinks that it might be for you. It has to come from inside here and in here. Pipes, physiology, intellect, psychology, emotion, and spirit. Then everything can make sense. Does it make sense to either of you to hold 300-pound bar on your chest for 1 hour and 5 minutes and then be able to press it to the top in less than a second? Does that make any sense in the real world?
It doesn't.
Physically, no.
No. There's
No,
nothing we're
physically
going to do in life that does that. But if you understand what has to happen to not let that bar sink and make a permanent indentation, break your ribs, whatever, 300 pounds is a lot of weight for some people. Maybe not for either of you guys, but some people it's a lot of weight for. And then to be able to press it, we can't see my arms here, but because it has to be done in less than a second. Now, everything that goes into that, that's what's used when you get on the field to play. That's what's used when you go to the gym and do your drills or whatever it is your coach or your mentor has you doing. That is going to be, you'll never say, wow, man, I'm not coming back anymore. I can't do that ISO extreme for that long. I can't do extreme slow that long. I had a guy from the Cardinals, big ass tight end, and he was one of those guys, Jay, I get paid $3 million a year. I don't need to do this. I said, well, that's fine. For whatever reason, he decided to continue coming. He became one of my biggest spokespeople. He brought, at that time, the general manager of the Cardinals in, the head coach, the trainer, the strength coach, the doctor, and he showed him, because he could hold 400 pounds on slightly bent arms, okay, for 20 minutes, and then follow it up with 5 reps. Okay, elbows 45 degrees, lower arm perpendicular, chin on the chest without raising your head, shoulders down, hips up, feet flat on the floor, lower legs perpendicular, all of the basic rules of a bench press without a flaw. The general manager said, wow, I've never seen. He was a player. He was on the Cardinals teams when they won championships, so you know how long ago that was. And I said, I've never seen anything like that in my life. And this player said, well, I can do it on glute ham. I can do it on squat. I can do it on deadlift. I can do it on anything you ask. Because we don't train exercises. If you said I could only use a hang clean, could only use a bicep curl, could only use whatever, I could make it all work. It fits into the system. I use the exercise movements I choose because they give you and everyone else the opportunity to feel. Okay, and if you feel it, it's wrong, unless the feeling is here. Should feel nothing in our extremities, nothing in our body except our heart. John, are you married?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So, obviously, you've experienced love.
Yes.
Where did you experience love? In your heart, right? Because it wouldn't be love if it wasn't here. You would be lost if it was up here. Okay? And there might be a little love too, you know, sometimes you have to have love to get the love. You know. Okay? But anyhow, everything is from here. And if we can create an atmosphere where that is, everything else is easy. You get to do what you want to do. Now, unfortunately, we're human. And we have the gift of free will. And we can rationalize any damn thing we want. We can rationalize that Jay doesn't know anything. The exercises I've chosen give you immediate feedback. So I'll say to someone in the gym, Chris, John, what did you feel when you were doing that? And unless they've been here a while, I felt my hamstring when I was pulling down. Okay, so we're going to start all over. What do you mean? So you're not supposed to feel your hamstring. If you feel your hamstring, it's wrong. Because it means that, you know, we'll just keep it simple here. Antagonistic muscle did not lengthen at the same level of force, same velocity, at the same moment in time, for the same length of time, yada, yada. That's not how you exist in life and how you get to be the miracle and do all the things that we think we want to do. Okay? That has to occur. The basis of everything we do. Okay, so if you guys want to ask me some questions, go ahead, because I've said out of.
Oh, man.
Okay.
All right, John. Yeah, me
I'm
too. Me
processing.
too. And
Yeah.
I've been at this for 17 years, so
Right.
this is I'm still processing.
Well, Chris, you know Charles that works
yes, Charles
with and for
Maki,
me,
yes,
right? Yes, and Charles, when I die and Cindy dies, because the business is Cindy's and mine, my wife, and when we die, then it's going to be his, and he can do whatever he wants with it. But when I taught Charles, I didn't tell him anything. I gave him a movement where he could learn. And if he didn't learn, well, we didn't have anything to discuss. And there's something very, very cool that happens after doing an iso extreme for a minimum of 3 minutes. And it's not fighting it. It's not working through it. Because Charles and I and other people, my wife, we've had people in a push-up position sit on our back. I've had 250-pound women sit on my back and do an iso extreme push-up without caving in, but yet still pulling down. Keep increasing that joint angle to the true greatest joint angle. And then for 10 minutes, and when they get off, be able to explode up out of that push-up position onto a box, one hand on each box that was 46 inches high. Now, do you think getting on a field of play of any kind would be difficult after that?
No, it shouldn't be. Right.
Not at all. You'd be able to do everything
Right.
and anything. You know, strength is the underlying factor to every other physical quality. But it doesn't mean you have to bench press the world. It means that you need to be able to recruit these muscle fibers at high velocity and at the same time lengthen. Because, you know, everybody likes to stretch and sometimes they call it relax. Muscles never relax. They either contract to shorten or they contract to lengthen. They're always contracting. I always like it when I hear a trainer tell me, well, his glutes aren't firing. You
Oh,
guys
yeah.
have heard that all
Right.
day, every day, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, they're firing. It's just that they're shortening. They're not ever lengthening, so we can't ever use them. But they're firing. They never stop. If muscles don't work, we crumble up. We're worth nothing. Because that's what gives us our shape. You know? It's muscle. And again, it doesn't have to be bench press the world. But it has to be able to utilize everything you have. So, John, I'm going to make something up here. Okay? Just, for the sake of this on camera here and for the people who are going to listen to this later, hold your hand up here. And we're facing each other. And we're going to hit each other in the chest. Okay, and I'm going to say that you bench 500 and I bench 150. But if I get to your chest first, who wins?
You.
Me. And I bench 30% of what you do. But I can create it at a much faster rate than you do. It doesn't matter if it's 66% less than you or 1,000% less. I win. I always win. The smallest, most powerful athlete always wins. And as long as I mention the word athlete, I only know a handful of people that I would actually call an athlete. Everyone else plays games or they engage in sporting display. I have only met in my 50 years of doing this a handful. 3 of them are women that were quite amazing. And, everybody wants to be an athlete, but an athlete is somebody who has mastery and control over every aspect of their life. Because you can't get to the point where you feel nothing when you're moving a load, when you're jumping and landing or hitting an opponent or whatever it may be. Until you get to that point where you feel nothing, you're never going to be an athlete. So an athlete isn't somebody who plays games and gets paid. It isn't the definition we always hear about and what supposedly these kids look up to. If you get on my website, and I'm sure you've checked it out,
Absolutely.
Chris, I know you have. If you look at Helene, I don't remember how many years ago I met Helene. I met her because she had just finished her 3rd surgery for brain cancer. And she had other types of cancer also. She had shoulder problems, hip problems, knee problems because she ran her whole life, high school, college. She was a nurse. And because of these different types of cancer, they told her, get your life in order because you're not going to be around long. She didn't want to believe that, but everybody told her that's the way it was. And however she got wind of me. And she came in and she first met with Charles. And long story short, Helene spent maybe 40 minutes in the gym. She would never run more than 1 or 2 miles a week. And she set, I don't even know how many records she has now, 15, 18, 20. First one was running from San Diego to Raleigh, North Carolina. And she ran the equivalent of a marathon every day for 93 days in a row to get to North Carolina. How many people have you met that can run a marathon within a week and be healthy? 93 in a row. She was raising money, obviously, for cancer patients. At the end of each day, she would go to the local hospital, and that's how she planned her route. And she had people in a car that would follow her, and, because she had been attacked multiple times. People just aren't very nice. But anyhow, she would go to the local hospital and speak for a couple hours. And then she'd always have to have her ice cream before she would go to bed. And then she'd wake up the next day and do it all over again. The only thing that happened was she went through 37 pairs of shoes. That's the only negative. She wanted to run back, but she had to be tested because she still had a stint. Okay? So she had to be tested, and they told her that, unfortunately, we have some lymph problems, and they wouldn't let her run back. Now, to show you what kind of person this individual, Helene, is, she comes into the gym with a stent in her chest. She had chemo and whatever else they did to try and kill her for over 65 days. And I didn't talk to her every day. I talked to her maybe once every 10 or 12 days. And I gave her things to do while she was in bed. And the conversation was always, which she's getting ready to do now, Jay, let's come up with a strategy for me to run across the tundra in Canada. And she wants to mimic the run that, I don't remember his first name, Fox. He was trying to raise money for cancer and he ended up dying in the middle of this run. She wants to duplicate that run and finish it for him. And we had planned this strategy. Now it's coming to fruition here. She's been out of the hospital now about 2 months. When she came out of the hospital, she was about 65 pounds overweight, looked like hell warmed over. And she trains 20 to 30 minutes a day. Again, she never runs more than 1 or 2 miles a week. There's people who she does lectures, she's movies made about her. I don't even know how many books. I've written the foreword in multiple books for her. And that's truly the way she trained. And people can't believe it. How can you run a marathon with only running 1 or 2 miles a week?
Yeah,
it can't be done. It can't be this. It can't. And yet we were able to do that. And it's all the things that I'm talking to you about. Now, obviously, Chris knows, John, you don't, and your listeners won't, but this is extremely organized. I'm anal to the point of my wife, my kids, my friends. They don't like sitting and having a conversation with me. They don't like eating a meal with me. Because I live this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days per year, and the extra on the leap year. Okay? I live it, I live it, I live it. And people don't always want to be around somebody like that. Because if you stand, I also noticed, John, that you stand with your feet inappropriately. You stand on an inappropriate part of your foot in a couple of these podcasts. That turns off your nervous system. When your nervous system is turned off, you'll never be able to get into position or the correct position. And I think I also heard you say that it's either 90-degree angle or nothing, right? It's 90 degrees or a straight line. That's where humans want to be. And if it's not, then there's a problem. Now, there are a couple of things, but we don't need to get into those. But anyhow, if you start in the wrong position, how the heck can you ever get in the right position to begin to do the movement that you're going to do? So you can't just stand there and I say, okay, Chris, John, we're going to do an iso extreme wall squat. You can't just get over and get against the wall any way you want. You have to follow the rules of human design in order to get into position so that you can execute the wall squat appropriately and get to this no feeling at the end of this movement. And I don't know who may have said this before me. I don't ever claim to have said anything first, but the entry position and the exit position are all that matter. Everything else in the middle is minutia. But if you try and screw with that minutia by playing around with it and improving it, you screw up the beginning and you screw up the end. You have to let the minutia happen in the middle, however it wants to happen. What we need to make sure is the entry and the exit. Nothing else in the middle matters. Never change it. Never try and change it. Because you're going to screw up the entry and screw up the end. Now, let me tell you a little bit about something that I did and how I know and how I've mastered these variables. is because I trained myself to do some really cool, wonderful things. Okay? I've benched 550, I've squatted over 700, I've deadlifted 700 at 198 pounds body weight. I was on the border of being a national champion velodrome cyclist at 251 pounds. And Chris, you've trained some cyclists. John, I don't know if you have or haven't, but these people are 120 pounds, 118 pounds. So I'm over double their weight. And my kids went with me to this national event, and in 6 events I lost to the same person, and I was losing by like this much, where they were all photo finishes. Didn't matter the distance, 200-meter sprint, kilo. My kids started rooting for the other guy because they knew he was going to beat me. But in reality, I'm 250 pounds. This guy is a third of my weight, or, you know, I really won. You know, I didn't because I didn't cross the finish line first. But to move my weight at that velocity, wow, that's what's really cool. Now, the cool thing that I think is cool, and yeah, I spell it with a K, and my wife said cool never is started with a K. It's always a C. My wife is, you know, we'll just say like a savant. Genius IQ, photographic memory. We have a son that I used to say, no, it said this. And he goes, no, Jay, if you remember, it's my wife's son, not my son, but our son. No, if you remember, page 13, paragraph 3, sentence 2, this is what it said. Oh, yeah, okay. I thought it said something like that, you know. So we don't want to do anything except what's right at the start. And if you're right at the start, your brain will probably take you to the end that's correct. Because everything is based on reflex patterns, reflex arcs. John, is it all right if I'm critical again?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, and I don't mean anything negative by this, because this is my job. This is what I do, and I live it. I go to them. I can't go to a mall and sit there. I can't go to a restaurant and sit there, because I'm always looking at people and giving them hints on how they could eliminate their back problem, and I don't even know who they are. Okay, but there's 2 things going on with you. It looks like you have level 2 neurological fatigue, and the other thing is that the right side of your brain is not fully functional. You're always putting your hand here. Okay? It's telling us that that part of the brain needs information. So you have to give it information. Obviously, that is the most important part of the brain if you want to be a real athlete. So those are the things we look at. Those are the things we eliminate. Though it's not all about just looking at form on a bench press, because anybody can learn good form. That's not a hard thing to do if you want to do it. If you don't, well, then it can be really difficult. But then I ask you to leave. The hard part is in being able to support being in that position and what happens afterwards. We have several little tests that we do after a performance is made, if it's a ISO extreme, manual overspeed, extreme slow, whatever it may be. And just for your guys' knowledge and the people who listen to this, ISO extreme and extreme slow are truly one and the same thing. One begins somewhere other than the extreme position. The other begins in the extreme position, and you try and increase that greatest joint angle. Imagine if you could create force in the camera here from here as opposed from here. How much more force could you create? Tell you a little story. You guys have inertia impulse machines?
I did.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
They were they're a very sophisticated rebound and altitude drop, we'll say. And the guy that created them, we're very good friends, still to this day, very good friends. And he didn't like the way I was using it. So whenever I was out of town, he would come in and tell Charles how I used it wrong and everything. And I'd always call him and say, come in when I'm there. Come on. Come on. So he did. And he brought one of his martial artists with him. as he was going to show me, because everything, I don't know, do you guys have the measurement system that goes with it?
No.
You can, no? Okay.
No.
See, it's like data logging for a car or a motorcycle. Tells you everything and anything you needed to know and didn't want to know. And so he had his guy demonstrate and was extremely braggadocious about the levels that he was performing. And at the time, I had Adam Archuleta and Todd Heap. Todd was a bigger guy, tight end, 6'5", 265, 280 pounds, depending on what time of year. And those were going to be my two demos. And so Todd went first. And Todd went, and he blew everything away that this martial artist just did. Every single aspect. Every measurement was far off the chart. And he looked at me, not Todd, but our inertia impulse guy, and said, how the hell does he do that? I said, it's because we train. And here's how we train. Nah, that can't be it. He says, let me see your other guy. Well, the other guy was Adam. And I'm not going to go into the story. But basically, he was enamored with Adam. And he said to me, Jay, let me tell you what Adam can do. If he was standing in front of you, he could take his hand and he could go into your head and he could knock the head off your shoulders because he produces that much force. Your head would be on the ground and you wouldn't even know it's coming yet. He was so fast. Now, since then, we have old women, young women, and I only use women because people think of them as weaker, not being able to produce the same thing a man can produce. And it's totally not meant that way at all. But people tend to believe that. I have women, and Steve no longer, he doesn't own the company anymore, by the way, but he no longer would send me free parts because these women were breaking the machine on a regular basis. They were creating so much force at such great velocity. We weren't just breaking the ropes and the connection. We were breaking the upright. We were breaking the plastic off of there. We were breaking the platform.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, those.
Now we just repair ourselves.
Guys, I'm gonna have to get out. I've got clients coming in, but I will let you guys in the interview. I do appreciate it very much, Jay. I've got to exit, so
yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. All right, Chris. Yep. We'll talk soon. And Jay, I'm probably going to have to get off here too. I got people coming in as well.
Any questions you want to ask me as long as I'm in real life here?
I have a lot of questions, and I don't even really know where to start. You've made me really think about some things. So I'll be honest, man, and our listeners are going to hear this, and they're going to hear me stumbling because you really made me think about a few
Isn't
things.
that what it's all about, John? If you
it is, and what I
move forward,
right? And I think that's one of the things that you've given me without even knowing it. And you talk about I was going to tell you this off air, but I feel like going ahead and telling you now. And then I need to get off this, but you talk about the end being the feeling, and and I may be way off on this, so tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm open to being, I want to be the best, and I remember, so you may or may not remember Elliot Young, but Elliot Young was,
first reminded me of him, a decathlete. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Elliot kind of introduced me, to this, a little bit in high school, and then I started to look into you, and you asked me earlier if I had ever had an athletic feat that I had, and it's not necessarily just an athletic feat as much as it was like I had a tumor on my spine, and and there was a good chance that I may never walk again after that, but the whole process of it all is. I remember finding you after Elliot put me through some things, and the Adam Archuleta videos and all that. We don't need to get into all that. I'd love to talk about that another day, but I said that's what I I want. That's what I felt that. Like I could feel it, and throughout my career, that's what it's always been.
Yep.
Like I wanted to carry on, one day, the things that I clearly still have a lot to learn on, but just carry that on because I knew there was something different, something special. And I think you answered the question without me even asking of where the other programs failed. And again, maybe I'm wrong on it, but other programs fail because they missed the entire point.
Yes,
right?
and let me just interject real quick. When I study these other systems, they all fail at high load, high volume, and high velocity. So I knew that if I could come up with a way to train at high load, high volume, high velocity every day, we would be a success. That's a very important aspect. I'm glad you brought that up. Mm-hmm. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And so it's just, you say you're a firm believer in God, and so am I. And it's, it's not ironic that, we're here together talking. It's been great. And I would really like to do this again at some point if, if you're open to it. I think we could, continue talking and maybe get into some of the nitty gritty stuff of those programs and everything else. But, I appreciate your time, and, I hope we can just communicate the same clear message that you try to put out there as well.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. It's nice
so
to meet
I just want to say thank you.
Who wants to be the greatest miracle that they can be? It's really refreshing. So Thank you.
Well, I appreciate your time, Jay. Thanks so much, and we will we'll definitely be in touch, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
Absolutely. Have a great day, sir.
All right, Jay. Have a blessed day.
Bye bye.
All right. That's the show, guys. Appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Have a great day.